Mr. Speaker.
Order. Notice of motion. Item 1, hawker culture. A motion standing in the name of Mr. Leong Mun Wai.
Mr. Leong Mun Wai.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this House calls on the government to review its policies relating to hawkers and the management of hawker centres, to provide better support for hawkers, to sustain and grow our Singapore's hawker culture, so that Singaporeans can continue to enjoy good and affordable hawker food. Sir, since 2020, our hawker culture has been recognized as a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage. But have we provided enough support to our hawkers, who are the creators of that culture? That is the question that prompted the PSP to raise this motion today. The UNESCO accolade aside, hawker culture and hawker food are central to our Singaporean identity. Hawker centres, coffee shops, and food courts are spaces for Singaporeans from all walks of life, rich or poor, regardless of race, language, or religion, to interact and enjoy delicious, affordable food. It is a true melting pot for all Singaporeans. It is one of the things that Singaporeans miss when they are overseas, myself included. While I was building my career overseas in the 90s, one of the things I missed most was a delicious bowl of laksa. In fact, I love laksa so much that I have started a laksa store in Tokyo in 2015 at the famous shopping district of Motesando in central Tokyo. However, the hawkers who are behind the delicious local food that we enjoy have not been provided with sufficient support. A hawker's life is a tough one. Not enough is done to address the hardship of our hawkers, who are burdened with the need to provide cheap food to the public, high rent, harsh work environment, and arguably predatory management practices in the social enterprise hawker centers. We have a responsibility in this House to pass on our hawker culture to our future generations, and to ensure that it not only survives, but flourishes long into the future. But our hawkers will need a lot of help and support at the national level to achieve this. We need to do more than putting up shows at the National Day Parade to celebrate our hawker food heritage. The government did not build any new hawker centers from 1986 until 2011. Since then, many Singaporeans, including those who know the hawker trade, have stepped forward to contribute good ideas to better support hawkers. However, besides the introduction of the social enterprise model, officially called the socially conscious enterprise hawker center model, not much else has fundamentally changed about the way the government manages hawkers. Many other ideas relating to building up the human capital of the industry and providing further support to hawkers have not been implemented. I would like to acknowledge first the effort of those Singaporeans who have participated in the relevant discussions and research. I also seek their indulgence to use some of their ideas in the debate today. Personally, the hawker trade is close to my heart. My late father was a hawker in Chinatown, the sole breadwinner of our family. My sister is a wonton noodle hawker today. I'm deeply honored indeed to have the opportunity to speak up on this issue in this House today. The PSP hopes that our motion today will remind Singaporeans of the people behind the good and affordable food we enjoy every day. Some of these hawkers, advocates, and supporters are with us in the House today, in the Strangers Gallery, at my invitation. I would like to invite the whole House to join me in a round of applause to thank them for their hard work and their dedication to providing good food at affordable prices for Singaporeans. Today, I will first discuss the importance of preserving and promoting our hawker culture. Before discussing the problems faced by hawkers, my colleague, Ms. Hazel Phua, and I will then put forward possible policies to resolve these problems. These policy recommendations are based on the belief that the success of our hawker culture is inextricably tied to the success of our hawkers. First, I will speak on the importance of preserving and promoting our hawker culture. The PSP believes there are at least 4 major benefits. Firstly, hawker culture and hawker food is a rich heritage handed down by our ancestors that needs to be preserved and passed on to future generations of Singaporeans. The UNESCO recognition is an added reason for us to sustain this heritage. Secondly, affordable hawker food has provided Singaporeans a buffer against the high cost of living in Singapore. The convenience and affordability of eating out also allowed many families to earn dual incomes. With millions of meals served to Singaporeans every day, hawker centers are the people's kitchens. To maintain them, we have to first help our hawkers to survive and thrive. Thirdly, the hawker trade is one of the most conducive routes for a budding entrepreneur to try out a business venture. I lived in Japan for many years, so I know of many Japanese who talk about starting a cooked food business as a business or hobby or just a place to meet friends and people. I'm beginning to see this happening among some of our younger Singaporeans today, but their dreams are often hindered by the high entry cost to the hawker business. I'm confident that with lower rent and better working conditions, hawker centers can become incubators for our future food and beverage entrepreneurs. Last but not least, there are huge economic benefits if we promote our hawker food both domestically and internationally. As a parallel, Thai food has done very well globally. The number of Thai restaurants overseas tripled from about 5,000 in 2002 to 15,000 in 2024. But a large part of their success is due to strong government support, such as training chefs, providing loans, and conducting market research to advise chefs on how to appeal to foreign tastes. Thai dishes often rank among the top in global culinary surveys, overshadowing our local dishes. I've been very unhappy for a long time that chicken rice is recognized more as a Thai dish than a Singapore dish in Tokyo. There is no reason why Singapore hawker food cannot be as world-renowned as Thai food. The well-reviewed urban hawker in New York, curated by Mr. K.F. Sito, is an example of the success we can achieve if we do more as a nation to promote our hawker food overseas. We can extend our soft power by winning the hearts and minds of people all over the world through their stomachs. This is another example of how we can punch above our weight. However, despite all the significant cultural and economic benefits that hawker culture can bring us, it may wither in the future without policy adjustments to provide greater support to our hawkers. A serious examination of the problems faced by hawkers and new policies to address these problems are long overdue. The crux of the problem, arguably, is that the government expects hawkers to provide cheap food as a safety net amidst the very high cost of living environment in Singapore, yet at the same time, the government has created a high-cost environment for hawkers to operate in. PSP calls for a holistic and comprehensive review of the hawker trade by the government, which should cover all hawkers operating in the hawker centers, coffee shops, and food courts. We do not know how long more we can sustain our hawker culture because of the many challenges faced by hawkers. These challenges can be grouped into 4 areas. 1, hawker center management, which includes problems with the social enterprise hawker center model. 2, high rent and other operating costs. 3, harsh working conditions, leading to shortage of manpower and successors. And 4, the expectation to provide cheap food, which is partly encouraged by the government. I will start by discussing the first problem of hawker center management. There are more than 120 hawker centers in Singapore today. Out of these, 12 are managed by private operators under the social enterprise model as of 31st December 2023. Since the introduction of the social enterprise model in 2012, we have seen multiple conflicts between hawkers and social enterprise operators because of high cost and onerous contractual conditions compared to the NEA-operated hawker centers. For example, in 2018, the hawkers of the Jurong West Hawker Center filed a petition against a 20-cent tray return surcharge imposed by Hawker Management, a social enterprise operator and subsidiary of the Koufu Group. It was also reported publicly in June 2024 that the hawkers of Bukit Canberra Hawker Center tried to lower cost by asking the operator to let them use a cheaper gas provider, but they were denied. Based on replies to my past PQs, we know that the median rent at social enterprise hawker centers is about 5% higher than the median rent at NEA-operated hawker centers. However, auxiliary costs at the social enterprise hawker centers, such as table cleaning fees, dishwashing fees, SNCC fees, and pest control fees, can add up to as much as the rent itself. Hawkers in social enterprise hawker centers also face many hidden costs. For example, they must bear the cost of offering loyalty discounts, budget meals, and subscriptions to food delivery platforms. All these are part of a long list of onerous contractual obligations on hawkers who may have to pay damages or receive demerit points if they fail to meet these requirements. Following the outcry in 2018 against the social enterprise operators, NEA reviewed the key contractual terms between such operators and their storeholders, and asked operators to make changes with effect from 1st January 2019. However, the contractual term seems to have continued to be very onerous, as I've confirmed in a contract signed by a hawker of a social enterprise hawker center in 2022. Over the years, the office holders have repeatedly come out to say that the social enterprise model is sound, working well, and has benefited hawkers and customers. But it is a sign of things are not going well when many more hawkers of social enterprise hawker centers are terminating their contract earlier compared to hawkers of NEA-operated hawker centers. From 2019 to 2023, the average annual early termination rate for food stores at social enterprise hawker centers was 8%, more than twice as high as a 3% early termination rate at NEA-operated hawker centers. The social enterprise model is arguably not helping to sustain and grow the hawker culture. I've done some calculations on the potential cost burdens imposed on hawkers by social enterprises. For example, it was reported that JW Heritage, another social enterprise operator and a subsidiary of the Changqing Mihua Group, paid $4.86 million to the government to manage the Jurong West Hawker Center when it reopened in 2023. Since there are 39 stores there, this contract price translates into a cost of $125,000 per store. This cost represents a huge cost burden, which must be recouped either from the store holders or customers. But is it justifiable for private operators to extract surpluses or profits from hawker centers which are public assets? Even if 50% is required to go back to programs that benefit the hawker centers and hawkers. The PSP recommends that the current social enterprise model be phased out as the contracts of the current operators expire. This will eliminate the problems in social enterprise hawker centers. PSP proposes the hawker center management be taken over by a new government agency tentatively called Hawker Singapore. This agency can be formed by transferring the current hawker centers group of NEA to it, and then further expanding it. Hawker Singapore will oversee the management of all hawker centers in Singapore and the promotion of hawker culture domestically and internationally, working together with other relevant agencies, such as the Singapore Tourism Board and Enterprise Singapore. It will work with all hawkers in each hawker center to develop its own unique value proposition within the general guidelines laid down by itself. We envisage that Hawker Singapore will be advised by an independent industry expert panel to formulate strategies, finance expansion, and assist hawkers to professionalize their business. We also propose that Hawker Singapore should set up a hawker academy to be a focal point for training young hawkers. Former member Mr. Leong Pereira had raised this in this House in 2021, and PSP supports this suggestion. A hawker academy will provide training and succession planning for hawkers, set standards for the hawker trade, and help to preserve a selection of heritage foods that are important to our different communities. In addition to centralizing the management of all hawker centers, I will present 3 more policy recommendations to deal with the 3 other problems I discussed earlier. These recommendations will provide the impetus to preserve and grow the hawker trade in a sustainable way. Firstly, to deal with the problem of high rent, the government needs to move away from the practice of setting hawker store rents by tender. While rent may not be the biggest cost item for a hawker, it is the biggest burden because it is a fixed cost. Hawkers can save on variable cost, but not fixed cost. Only the pioneer cooked food hawkers who were resettled from the streets get to enjoy subsidized rentals between $192 and $384 per month at the NEA-operated hawker centers. They represent about 30% of the hawkers today. The non-subsidized stores, which account for 70% of the hawkers, must pay market rent, determined via the tender system, where stores are rented out to the highest bidder. In 2023, the median monthly rent for non-subsidized stores at NEA-operated hawker centers was $1,625 per month, but bids frequently exceeded that, especially for stores in better locations with higher footfall. One successful tender recently exceeded $10,000 per month. While allowing bids to hit new records through the tender system, the government also reduces a tendered rent to an assessed market rent when the hawker renews his contract after the initial 3-year period. In other words, from the 4th year onwards, the $10,000 bidder will pay a much lower rent on the same store. Last week, the government announced that it will prolong the time required to adjust the tendered rent to the assessed market rent so as to deter excessively high hawker store bids. This latest change shows that the government is aware of the problems of the current system. However, the question of why such a system still exists remains. The current tender system has a negative effect of driving up headline rentals in hawker centers. This can have a ripple effect on the rents and values of HDB coffee shops. Several HDB coffee shops have been transacted at multi-million dollars in recent years, bought by large business groups. A record price of $9,361 per square foot was set in 2022 by the Zhangjiang Mihua Group when it bought a Yisun coffee shop for $40 million. Such high market prices for coffee shops have been a major cause of the rising cooked food prices and cost of living in Singapore. The PSP recommends that we move away from the tendering model altogether. Instead, we propose a more flexible rent model with the aim of lowering rent and curbing excessive speculation in coffee shops. Under this rent model, all hawker stores will be charged a monthly base rent of $500 or 3% of gross turnover, whichever is higher. Stores will be allocated by a random ballot within each food category, curated by Hawker Singapore, under the advice of the independent industry panel. Currently, NEA has 5 categories of stores: cooked food, halal cooked food, Indian cuisine, drinks, and cut fruits. We suggest adding a 6th category, namely heritage foods, to ensure that as many traditional foods unique to the different races in Singapore as possible are preserved. For example, it would be nice to see a revival of Eurasian food in our hawker centers. Later, my colleague Ms. Hazel Poa will present a possible model for curating hawker stores. PSP's proposed rental model is skewed to support smaller hawkers with lower rentals. It will lower the barriers of entry for new hawkers and thus enhance the sustainability of our hawker culture. At the same time, it will not price out hawkers who are successful in growing their business. Secondly, we need to adjust the manpower policies for hawkers to deal with the problem of manpower shortage and the lack of successors. The hawker trade is physically demanding, taxing on their health, and even dangerous, especially for elderly hawkers. Hawkers must deal with long working hours. For example, to serve the breakfast crowd at 6 or 7 a.m., the hawkers must wake up at 1 or 2 a.m. Floors in hawker stores are slippery or oily, and hawkers must work around hot oil, knives, and choppers. There have been many accidents involving hawkers. In September, it was reported that a famous Chinatown clay pot rice hawker, Uncle Hong, decided to retire because of complications after he fell and broke his pelvic bone. Mr. Tan Hock Guan, who ran the Michelin-recognized Guang Ki fried kway teow store in Ghim Moh, also retired last November when he fainted while frying kway teow. All these are not new to me. I have witnessed as a child the many accidents and hardships experienced by the Chinatown neighbors of mine who are hawkers. Some might have made some money, but usually they had to retire relatively young due to various ailments. For hawkers, additional manpower can help to reduce their workload and prolong their working life. However, apart from hawker store owners, few Singaporeans would want to work at a hawker store. In this case, a work permit holder will complement our current hawkers without threatening the job security of Singaporeans. Therefore, PSP recommends that each cooked food hawker store, including drinks and cut fruit stores, should be allowed to employ one work permit holder as a store assistant. This is not completely new policy because the government already allows companies operating coffee shops and food courts to hire work permit holders. PSP also believes that the recent move by the government to allow hawkers to employ long-term visitor pass holders as store assistants will not be adequate to address the manpower problems of the hawker. It is difficult to understand why coffee shop and food court operators are allowed to employ work permit holders, but individual hawkers are not. Our policy proposal will not undermine the Singaporean character of our hawker centres because only one work permit holder is allowed per store. On the other hand, our proposal will reduce the workload of senior hawkers and allow them to continue their trade for a longer time, while we encourage our younger Singaporeans and second-generation hawkers to enter the hawker trade with our new rent structure and training at the new Hawker Academy. This provides more assurance that our hawker culture remains sustainable. Thirdly, to keep hawker food affordable in the immediate future, the government should provide targeted discounts for needy groups and adjust the budget meal policies that have emerged in recent years. The government has introduced the budget meal initiative, possibly to insulate Singaporeans from rising costs in other areas like housing, COEs, and healthcare. Social enterprise hawker centres and some HDB coffee shops already contractually force storeholders to sell budget meals, usually at $3 or $3.50. By 2026, all stores in rental HDB coffee shops will be required to sell these budget meals. The problem is, all these budget meals are paid by the hawkers. Hawkers in social enterprise hawker centres are also forced to provide discounts at their expense to Pioneer, Merdeka, and CHAS card holders. I do not believe that there is any other industry where we contractually force suppliers to sell items below a certain price. When HDB rents out shop spaces for supermarkets in the new estates, for example, HDB does not contractually force the supermarket operator to sell some budget food items below market prices. So why do we require this of our hawkers? Every cent earned by the hawkers is hard-earned money. Half of the storeholders in the hawker centres are lower-income Singaporeans who received the workfare income supplement in 2020. These hawkers are in no position to do charity and should not be forced to do so. Hawkers should be allowed to determine their own prices, which should not be controlled by the government or operators. They deserve to be fairly remunerated and incentivized to sell good and affordable food to Singaporeans. It is the government's responsibility to ensure that food remains affordable. We propose that discounts for Pioneer, Merdeka, and CHAS card holders should be paid for by the government, for example, through the funds in the Pioneer or Merdeka generation funds. These discounts should be made available for food at all hawker centres. The government can also provide lower-income households with more CDC vouchers so that they can use these vouchers to pay for their hawker meals. Sir, in closing, our hawker culture is a precious inheritance from our pioneer generation, which we should preserve and grow. The UNESCO accolade has given us an added reason to do so. However, high operating costs and harsh working environment have deterred younger Singaporeans from entering the hawker trade, while existing hawkers are aging and retiring. As a result, our distinctively Singaporean hawker culture and food are fast disappearing. The government's policies responses to these problems so far are too little and too late. I've shared 4 policy changes to improve the prospects and livelihoods of our hawkers so that they are motivated to professionalize, innovate, and sustain our hawker culture. Firstly, PSP recommends that the social enterprise hawker center be phased out and the management of hawkers centralized under a new government agency called Hawker Singapore. We have also proposed a new rent model which will charge lower rent and is intended to have ripple effects on rents in coffee shops and food courts. Next, we propose allowing each hawker store to employ 1 work permit holder as store assistant. Finally, instead of forcing hawkers to provide budget meals at their own expense, the government should pay for targeted food discounts for Pioneer, Merdeka, and Charles card holders at all hawker centers and provide lower-income households with more CDC vouchers. My colleague, Ms. Hazel Phua, will speak on 2 other policy proposals later on centralizing procurement of essential ingredients and revising the Code of Conduct for leasing of retail premises. PSP believes that our 6 proposed policy changes will reinvigorate our hawker culture and allow it to shine brightly on the global culinary scene. At the same time, it will ensure that the hawker center, the people's kitchen of our nation, will provide us with affordable food for many more generations to come. Only then can we say our hawker culture has truly lived up to its reputation as a UNESCO intangible world heritage. Sir, I beg to move for country, for people.